What if I told you that Saint Anthony of Padua performed miracles so astonishing that even skeptics were left speechless? Imagine a man so deeply connected to God that he could heal the sick with a single touch, bring the dead back to life, and even command animals to obey his words. St. Anthony of Padua was no ordinary man. He was a living miracle. But how did he gain such divine power? How did a simple priest become one of the most legendary miracle workers in history? What happened in his lifetime that made people from all over the world turn to him for help, even after his death? In the year 1195, in Lisbon, Portugal, a child was born into a wealthy and noble family. His name was Fernando Martin de Boulois, but the world would later know him as Saint Anthony of Padua. Unlike other children of noble birth, Fernando did not desire wealth, power, or luxury. While many young boys of his age enjoyed fine clothing, entertainment, and a life of ease, Fernando's heart was drawn to something much greater: God. Instead of being fascinated by riches, he was fascinated by the mysteries of faith. As a young boy, he often spent hours in deep thought and prayer. His family provided him with the best education available, but Fernando was not interested in using his knowledge for power or status. His only desire was to serve God and to understand the deepest truths of faith. By the time he turned 15 years old, Fernando made a shocking decision, one that would forever change his life. He left behind his noble home and entered the Augustinian monastery of St. Vincent in Lisbon. His family was stunned. Why would a young man with everything, wealth, comfort, and a bright future, choose a life of discipline and prayer? His friends tried to convince him to reconsider, but Fernando's heart was set. He knew that his true calling was not in wealth, but in serving God. At the monastery, Fernando devoted himself to prayer, fasting, and deep study. He excelled in theology, philosophy, and the sacred scriptures. His intelligence and devotion set him apart from others, and soon he became well respected among his fellow monks. But even though he had dedicated himself to a life of faith, he had no idea that his journey was just beginning. God had far greater plans for him, plans that would turn him into one of the most extraordinary saints the world has ever known. Fernando's days in the Augustinian monastery of St. Vincent were filled with prayer, study, and discipline. He immersed himself in theology and the scriptures, growing into a man of great wisdom. Yet, something was missing. Despite his devotion, he felt an emptiness in his heart. Then, one day, his life changed forever. While at the monastery, Fernando heard of a small group of friars from a different religious order, the Franciscans. These men had dedicated their lives to absolute poverty, humility, and preaching the word of God. Unlike the Augustinians, who lived in monasteries and focused on study, the Franciscans traveled barefoot, preaching to the poor and living with nothing but faith. One event in particular shook him to his core. In 1220, news spread that 5 Franciscan missionaries had been brutally martyred in Morocco while trying to convert Muslims to Christianity. Their remains were returned to Portugal, and when Fernando saw their lifeless bodies, something ignited within him. He realized that he was not meant to spend his life within monastery walls. He was meant to go out into the world and preach. Determined to follow this new path, he made a bold decision. He requested to leave the Augustinians and join the Franciscan order, adopting a new name, Anthony. His fellow monks were shocked. Why would a highly respected scholar abandon a stable and comfortable life to live in poverty and uncertainty? But Anthony's mind was made up. He wanted to serve God in the most humble way possible, just like St. Francis of Assisi. After receiving permission, he donned the simple brown robe of the Franciscans and left his old life behind. But his journey was only beginning. He had no idea that God was about to use him to perform miracles that would shake the world. Now, Franciscan friar, Anthony was filled with excitement and purpose. He had abandoned a life of comfort for one of yadili, poverty, humility, and total devotion to God. But what he longed for most was to preach the gospel to those who had never heard it before. Inspired by the martyred friars, he set his heart on a dangerous mission, to travel to meet Morocco and spread Christianity. Little did he know, God had other plans. Determined and full of faith, Anthony set sail for Africa. But as soon as he arrived, something unexpected happened. He fell gravely ill. His body weakened, and he could barely move. The very mission he had dreamed of for so long was slipping away before it could even begin. For months he struggled against his sickness, but no matter how hard he prayed, he simply could not recover. It became clear God was closing this door for a reason. Defeated and heartbroken, Anthony had no choice but to return home. He boarded a ship back to Portugal, but then fate intervened again. As the ship sailed, a violent storm erupted, tossing the vessel in all directions. The crew fought desperately against the waves, but the winds were merciless. After hours of battling the storm, the ship was thrown off course and washed ashore, not in Portugal, but in Sicily, Italy. Anthony was lost in a foreign land. He was weak from illness, stranded, and uncertain of what to do next. But despite his struggles, he refused to believe that this was all just coincidence. God was leading him somewhere. He just didn't know where yet. With nowhere else to go, Anthony made his way to a small Franciscan hermitage in Monte Paolo, Italy. He spent months recovering there, praying for guidance. He had left everything behind to follow God's will, and now he was lost. But God had not forgotten him. In fact, his greatest miracles were just ahead. As St. Anthony continued his powerful preaching, his words reached the ears of not just the faithful, but also the skeptics and non-believers. While thousands embraced his teachings, some refused to believe in his holiness. One day, in a town filled with doubt and resistance, a group of people openly mocked him, questioning his faith and the power of his words. They challenged him, saying, "If what you preach is true, then prove to us that God listens to you." Instead of responding with anger, Anthony calmly walked toward a river. The townspeople followed, curious and skeptical. Standing at the edge of the water, Anthony lifted his hands and began to preach, not to the people, but to the fish. At first, the crowd laughed, ridiculing him. But then, something miraculous happened. Suddenly, the waters stirred. Small fish began appearing near the surface. Then, larger ones followed. Within moments, hundreds of fish gathered, rising from the depths, as if listening attentively to Anthony's sermon. The crowd fell, silent. The laughter stopped. Anthony continued preaching, and the fish remained in place, their heads lifted above the water, motionless, as if in reverence. As soon as Anthony finished his sermon, he blessed the fish and told them to return to their waters. Without hesitation, they immediately obeyed, vanishing beneath the river's surface. The townspeople, stunned beyond words, fell to their knees. Many began to weep, realizing they had witnessed a divine miracle. "Forgive us," they cried. "We doubted you, but now we believe." That day, many converted. And Anthony's fame spread even further. People from distant lands traveled just to hear his voice, hoping to witness the miraculous power that followed him. But not everyone was in awe. Some remained envious, watching his influence grow, and soon his enemies would plot once again to stop him. Even though St. Anthony of Padua passed away centuries ago, his presence is still felt today. His miracles, his faith, and his powerful words continue to inspire millions. From preaching to fish, to raising the dead, from healing the sick to surviving poison, his story proves one undeniable truth. Faith can change everything. But here's the question for you. Do you believe in miracles? Have you ever prayed to St. Anthony and experienced something incredible? Tell us in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications, so you never miss an amazing story like this. Thank you for watching, and remember, Saint Anthony is always listening.